Assin Manso Ancestral Slave River Park was one of the largest slave markets for gathering people to sell into slavery during the infamous transatlantic slave trade. It is especially worth seeing as a prelude to viewing Cape Coast Slave Castle, since you will be following the route taken by the ancestors of many African Americans and other diasporans.
My name is Kofi. I am going to be your guide.
Thank you, Kofi.
This part here, we have a river we'll be going to shortly. That is where our ancestors, who were born during the transatlantic slave trade, had their very last bath on the motherland before they were taken to the New World. Long before the trade and long before the arrival of the Europeans, our ancestors were living in kingdoms and in states. Greater portions of the motherland here were forest zones, and they were always on the move in search of resources. Because they were always on the move, when they get to a place where people are already existing there, they go for war. Those wars, whichever group wins, they take those they won over as captives, or what we would term as slaves of war. But these slaves were treated far better and in a very different way from the kind of treatments that were meted out to our ancestors during the transatlantic slave trade. Those captives of war or slaves of war were given freedoms and were having privileges. They served for a period of time and then they are set free to go out to do their normal life. This activity went on for a very long time until the arrival of the Europeans. The first group of Europeans who came to the motherland here were the Portuguese. They came in the year 1471 to a community called Elmina. When they got there, the community was already having its own name. The name was Assin Manso. But when they came, because they were seeing droplets of gold, they thought there was a mine closer. So they named the place Almina in their language, which means the mines. But because the locals couldn't pronounce it that way, they corrupted it into Elmina. And it has been like that all the way from that time until now being called Elmina. By 1482, they were done building their very first castle in the motherland. So the oldest castle we have in Ghana here is located in Elmina. Have you been there already? Yes, no.
We're going.
You'll be going there. That's very good. That's very good. So you come here, you go there, and you get the remaining of the story from there. This particular place here is known as the Ancestral Graveyard. This is where some of the descendants of the slave trade were brought all the way from the New World and were buried here. The very first one we have here is of a lady called Lady Crystal. This very first one, brought all the way from Jamaica. Lady Crystal. Then the one in the middle is a young man who was taken to the United States of America, went through the US Army all the way to a commander level. His name is Samuel Carson, but because of his identity, because of his color, he wasn't given a taken burial. So in the year 1998, these two mortal remains were brought back to this park. So people who are of our stock here, who were taken to the New World, were brought back to the park here to be given a befitting burial. The year 2019 was exactly 400 years where a ship left the shores of Africa with documented slaves. That activity happened in the year 1619. So 2019 was exactly 400 years since that activity. So the Prime Minister of Barbados and her team did an excavation in a slave cemetery in Barbados. The mortal remains they got from that cemetery were placed in a casket, flown all the way from Barbados by the Prime Minister herself, and were brought to this park. That is the third grave we have over. So this is from Barbados, this is from United States of America, and then this is from Jamaica. Yes. So we'll be making a walk shortly from here to the river.
Okay.
I'll be telling you about how the slave trade even started in the first place. Because remember, I was telling you about the captives of war.
Yeah.
Those slaves were not treated like the slaves in the transatlantic slave trade. So what happened along the way? On this journey, all the way from here till we get to Riverside, that is the conversation we'll be having.
Okay.
I always say the journey we do from here all the way to the Riverside, I don't call it tour. I call it experience because it gives us the opportunity to go back into the past, to know what our ancestors went through. That opens our eye to the realities. It gives us the opportunity to forge ahead. Since we know our history, we know where we are coming from, it's very easy for us to know where we are going. So we're making a short walk from here to the river. Let's feel free. If there is anything you don't understand, ask questions, because that is why I am here for. Taking a walk from here to the river. It was created here to give opportunity to our brothers and sisters coming back to write their names on the wall, to show that finally they are back to their roots. Service were having on their feet all the way from where they were captured from. So at the time, they were not moving freely like the way you and I will be walking freely to the riverside. They were having chains and shackles on their feet, so that it keeps them grounded and then prevent them from escaping or running away from whoever captured them. So imagine walking for this long distance with this kind of
And at
metal.
this point, we began to make our way down the path towards the Slave River. And the tour guide asked us to take off our shoes and to experience the fullness of what the slaves endured
Items
towards
such as gold,
the river.
ivory, pepper, and other spices. They were not using money, but they were practicing a system called barter trade. Barter trade is a system where they exchange goods for goods. So you have one item, you bring it to your brother or sister, and then in return you take another item.
Yeah, bartering. Yeah,
That was barter trade.
Okay, barter trade.
Yes. That was the kind of trade they were practicing.
When it comes to money, I they concentrate. Because I tell you straight, you are not my mate.
They were practicing barter trade. By the 16th century, they got access to the New World. And then they took the locals they saw there, who were the Red Indians, they took them as slaves. So they became slaves there to work on the plantations for the Portuguese. But because the number kept reducing because of a disease known as smallpox, so they needed extra manpower. So they decided to come back to the motherland here to trick our ancestors into a kind of trade. So they told our ancestors that these captives of war you got, they are basically your enemies, but you've given them so much freedom and they are living among you. Don't you think you are exposing yourself to danger? Because these individuals will know all your secrets and one day will stand against you. So why not give them to us? This is the Portuguese talking. Why not give them to us so that we take them to the New World? They help us on our plantations, and in return we will give you certain commodities. Our ancestors thought it was a good deal because one, they were taking away their enemies from within them, and two, they were getting certain commodities in return. So our ancestors decided to go into this kind of trade with the Europeans. They traded with the Portuguese for a very long time, exchanging goods with goods. But the one that was important to them at the time was the gold, and later the captives they were getting. These individuals were taken to the New World, and they were doing a lot of hard work for them on their plantation. The tobacco plantation, the sugarcane plantation, and the cotton plantation. They were making a lot of gains, and other European countries took notice. They also wanted a share of this trade. Several of them came to the motherland because they saw the Portuguese making a lot of gains. So which group came here? The Dutch, the Danes, the Swedes, the Germans, the French, the British. All of those people came to the motherland to have a part to play in this barbaric trade that was going on at the time. Among they themselves, they were fighting. So the castles they built exchanged hands over the time. Because when one group wins over the other, they take possession of the properties of the group. They built over 40 forts and castles spread across from our western coast all the way to our eastern coast. They stayed there to do their trading activities. They used those structures as holding place of facilities they were staying, and there were instances they used some of these castles as offices from where they were operating. They traded with our ancestors for a very long time. But whilst the trade was going on, the demand was far more than the supply they were getting. Because the question is, how far and how long can we keep fighting and getting captives of war? So the number wasn't up to the number they were looking for. So they tried influencing some of the locals with gun and gunpowder and gave them promises that when they are able to get more people for them, they will give them certain commodities. Some took the challenge and went into the interior to kidnap people for them. They went as far as places such as Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, through northern Ghana to capture people. All the way from there till they get to Assin Manso slave market over here.
They walked?
They walked. They walked barefooted like you and I are walking now. But they were in chains with those heavy metals attached to their feet. These were journeys that sometimes they did for over 6 months. So imagine walking barefooted like this continuously for 6 months. Just imagine how it will be. But that was the reality our ancestors went through. They took both men, women, and children. So there were instances the man, the wife, and the children were all kidnapped in this street. They had over 63 slave markets spread across the motherland. They had camps on the way where they stay to relax. So when they are walking and they get there,
and you get it everything. But this one call for a picture.
When they are tired, when we are back, they can take pictures.
Okay.
So when they are tired, they get to those places. They stay there to relax. When they are okay, they get up and continue with their journey. But whilst at those places, they have spies among them who they let go to check from the forest around to see if they will get someone to capture. So when they get someone, they put chains on that individual, bring him or her to the main camp, and they continue the journey with them. These are individuals who were forcibly kidnapped. They were not taken by they themselves volunteering, but they were taken against their wish. Move them all the way from those countries I mentioned through the middle belt till they get to the market here. The market here was like a joint place for both the Europeans and then the raiders. So this place, the merchants will come from the castles to meet the raiders in the market here. Which castles? Cape Coast Castle, Elmina Castles, and then Fort Amsterdam in Abanze.
Oh, I never heard of that.
So when you're on your way from Accra coming towards Cape Coast, there is a castle at the top of a mountain somewhere, a hill somewhere. They've written Fort Amsterdam. So that is also another place they were bringing them from. They came from to this market. When they get here, the whole of this section was part of the slave market. So at the peak of the trade, this market here was the busiest of all the slave markets in the whole of West Africa at the time. The largest in terms of land size is located at a community called Salaga. Get closer to this water so that we talk about the last part. We have 2 rivers from this particular place. The one flowing this way is called Nana Emisa, but the locals call it Ochi, the one flowing.
Okay.
Ochi basically means it grabs, the one flowing. Then the very calm one over here is the Slave River. It's in this river that our ancestors had their very last bath on the motherland. When they bring them here, still in chains and in shackles, they are placed in this water to wash off the dirt and the sweat on their body so that they look fresh for the market. They use the back of the bamboo to wash themselves from here. The back of the bamboo is very itchy, but that is what they use in washing themselves. When they are dry, they bring them to the open space here for their body to dry up. They use shea butter to apply on their body to get them fresh and shiny. They use broken mirror to take off their hair and then the beard of the young men.
The men had beards, all of them?
They took the beard off them and then the hair so that they will look young. After that activity, they have a tool called a speculum oris. They use that to force open their mouth so that they can count the number of teeth they have. That gives them an idea of how old they are. From there, they are now taken to the market to be sold into slavery. It's called Nana Emisa, but the locals call it Ochi, the one flowing. Ochi basically means it grabs, the one flowing. Then the very calm one over here is the Slave River. It's in this river that our ancestors had their very last bath on the motherland.
I want buy motor, I want build house, I still want to know what's it going to.
They intentionally didn't let them bath in this section because this one is always flowing. If they water. So that water there is known as Don Conceal, which is slave river or slave water. This is where the first auction is done. The first auction is an activity where they are sold into slavery. But that sale, the first of its kind, is done from this part here.
First auction.
So from the merchants, the raiders who kidnap the people, they exchange them for certain goods from here to the Europeans.
This one I got to be the job.
Several of our ancestors walked through this river. So anytime we are here, it's a perfect opportunity for us to touch this water. It gives us a great connection to our ancestors. It's a way of us saying thank you to our ancestors for going through all the things they went through, and we finally getting back here to reconnect with them. If you want to say a prayer from here, you are free to do that. If you want to say thank you to your ancestors, you are also free to do that.
This one I got to be the job.
Let's take a picture here by Nkrumah.
Cover my face, calling me